The hooded man stepped out of the fog, dragging behind him a shovel, a lantern, and what appeared to be the severed head of a Galactic patrol drone, still blinking faintly. No one had seen him walk up the hill. But now, as the body of Darren Holt steamed on the asphalt where the laser had hit him square in the chest, the town of Pine Loop Ridge stood paralyzed, because this stranger didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't even look surprised. He simply crouched beside the body and muttered, "Well, they started early this time." And with that he placed his hand on the corpse's forehead, and Darren gasped. Jackson Beale had never wanted to be anywhere remotely close to a miracle. He preferred his coffee burnt, his news local, and his aliens in the sky where they belonged, not patrolling small mountain towns like corporate mall cops with weapons of mass disintegration. He had been on his fourth morning sigh of the day, 2 sips into his bittersyn espresso, and 3 feet away from a ceramic mousse lamp at Betty's Cafe when the patrol ship descended. It didn't make a sound, not even a sonic hum. Just appeared like someone had dragged and dropped it onto the sky. It was supposed to be a routine patrol. Show the flag. Scan for anomalies. Glare at locals. Leave. The Galactic Patrol weren't known for casual conversation or deep thought. But they were feared. You didn't argue with them, you certainly didn't stare at them, and under no circumstances did you cross the street too slowly in their line of sight. Darren Holt did exactly that. The man had always been a little off. Former janitor at the observatory before it shut down. Lived alone. Talked to pigeons. Once tried to pay for groceries with a cassette tape. Everyone assumed he'd cooked his brain on conspiracy forums. But as he crossed Main Street, coffee in hand, glancing up nervously at the hovering cruiser, one of the patrol officers lifted their arm, barked something in machine speak and shot him. Clean. Quick. Brutal. People screamed. Betty dropped a tray of muffins. Jackson froze mid-sip, his mind trying to rationalize what just happened. Surely this was some non-lethal stun round. Surely someone would run over with a medkit. Surely this didn't just happen on a Tuesday morning. But Darren lay motionless, a blackened hole in his chest, steam curling from his jacket. Then came the shovel. At first it was just a metallic scrape from the top of Ridge Hill. Everyone turned. A silhouette emerged, tall and deliberate, cloak swaying with each step. He carried a lantern that gave off no light and a battered shovel with odd etchings carved into the wood. Slung from his shoulder was what looked like a patrol drone's head, still flashing the blue, active warning every few seconds. A glitch. A trophy? The hooded man didn't rush. He walked straight to Darren, knelt beside him and placed the lantern by the man's head. The patrol officer who fired the shot shouted something in a scrambled dialect. The man didn't respond. He laid a hand on Darren's chest. A sound, a hum, like a power grid waking up deep beneath the soil, echoed in the stillness. Darren Holt gasped. He sat bolt upright, choking eyes wide. The crowd staggered backward. The patrol raised their weapons again. "Unauthorized biological restoration detected," said the cruiser's automated system. The hooded man looked up slowly, his voice calm but cutting through the panic like a blade. "Then authorize it." Everything froze. Jackson's espresso cup hit the pavement. He didn't even notice. His legs began moving before his brain could object. He crossed the space between the cafe and the commotion, stepping past frozen citizens and a patrol officer twitching in indecision. The hooded man stood now. Taller than Jackson had expected. His face was hidden but his voice had gravity, like a man who didn't guess, didn't assume. "Who knew? You got a name?" Jackson asked. It was stupid. It was all he could think of. The man tilted his head slightly. "Names are stories we give ourselves. You may call me Elric." "Elric. Right. So I'm Jackson. That," he pointed at the sputtering, newly undead Darren, "was my neighbor. He thought pigeons worked for Neptune." "They don't," Elric replied. "Only the black-eyed ones." Jackson blinked. Meanwhile, the patrol officers seemed to be arguing amongst themselves, likely trying to interpret Elric's actions within their jurisdiction protocols. A dead civilian brought back to life by unknown tech? Unprecedented. Probably not even covered in their rulebook. Which might explain why the officer who fired the shot now looked like he was deeply reconsidering his career choices. Darren, on the other hand, was now clinging to Elric's legs, muttering, "They knew, I told you, they knew about the hill." Elric gently detached him. "Rest, Darren. You've already done more than most ever do. Jackson couldn't help but stare. You knew his name? How? Alric said nothing. He turned to the patrol. Your ship's navigation core is corrupted. Check the last authorization logs. You'll find overrides inserted by an off-grid relay. This wasn't a mistake. This was an execution. That word landed like a slap. The patrol officer flinched. Jackson took a half step back. How do you know that? Jackson asked. Alric finally turned to face him, and beneath the hood, Jackson saw eyes that shimmered, not inhuman but impossibly ancient. Eyes like mirrors into a past you didn't want to remember. Because, Alric said softly, I helped write the law they just broke. The silence that followed was broken only by Muffin, Jackson's neurotic beagle, who had somehow gotten loose and was now trying to chew through a patrol drone's cable bundle with alarming determination. No one dared move. A resurrected man wheezing on the ground, a stranger with forbidden tech and impossible knowledge, and a galactic patrol squadron who just realized they might be standing in the wrong historical moment. And the worst part? Jackson hadn't even finished his coffee. Jackson Beale had never been in a legal argument that involved a half-dead man, a shovel-wielding space wizard, and a rogue patrol unit whose sense of accountability was apparently downloaded from a rock. Yet somehow 24 hours after the incident he was knee-deep in galactic legalese, listening to an AI recite subclauses while Muffin, his dog, growled at a sensor post like it owed him money. Pine Loop Ridge, a place best known for its pancake festivals and suspiciously aggressive squirrels, was now under a level 3 exo lockdown. No one in. No one out. Especially not Alric. The Galactic Patrol had done what they always did when things went off script. Built a perimeter, jammed communications, and pretended to have a plan. They claimed the shooting of Darren Holt was an enforcement misfire triggered by biometric misidentification. Jackson didn't know what that meant, but it sounded like someone saying they tripped and fell on a trigger. Darren was recovering, though confused. He couldn't remember anything past seeing a blue light before everything went cold. Alric hadn't left his side since reviving him. Not out of sentimentality, it seemed, but because Darren, according to Alric, had said something moments before death that confirmed a timeline inconsistency. Whatever that meant, it hadn't come with subtitles. By midday, the patrol ship's legal module had rolled out its mobile unit. A sleek, spider-legged box that unfolded into a holographic kiosk and introduced itself as Adjudicator 19. Its voice was friendly in the same way a guillotine might be polished. It sat in front of the town hall, humming faintly, answering questions only when directly addressed and occasionally emitting bursts of static that smelled vaguely like old printer ink. Alric approached it calmly, Jackson trailing behind with a clipboard for no reason other than to feel like he was doing something. Muffin followed too, wearing a tinfoil hat that Jackson's niece insisted would protect his neural aura from being read. To Alric's surprise, and perhaps Jackson's as well, the kiosk acknowledged him as a registered former systems architect with Class X clearance, inactive. That made Jackson stop walking. Class X? What's that, some kind of cosmic black card? Alric didn't answer. He simply asked the kiosk to retrieve a file labeled, The Aegis Accords, Earth Addendum 01. The machine stalled, gears inside whirring like someone trying to crank-start a broken philosophy professor. This document is sealed, the AI finally replied, requiring authentication from a current, active legal representative of the Preservation Council. I am one, Alric said. Retired, not revoked. If you challenge it, I invoke Protocol 88E. The kiosk buzzed like a beehive left too close to a microwave. Protocol 88E is considered obsolete. And yet still binding, Alric said, arms crossed. It took 27 seconds, during which the kiosk quietly made a sound not unlike someone trying to chew a motherboard, before the file finally appeared. A holographic scroll unfurled in the air, long, intricate, written in both Galactic Standard and bizarrely Latin. Jackson leaned in. This is not what they taught us in school, he muttered. Because Earth never ratified the agreement, Alric said. The copy that the Galactic Council approved was forged. Earth was listed as consenting by proxy, a legal fiction created during the AI wars to justify containment. Jackson blinked. Wait, you're saying Earth isn't technically under galactic law? I'm saying Earth was never given the right to choose, Alric said. And if we push now, the illusion falls apart. But how come no one's found this before? Because no one alive remembered it. Until I came back. Jackson didn't like the way Ulrich said that. Came back from where exactly? Ulrich didn't answer. Instead he turned back to the kiosk. Deactivate quarantine status until a formal legal review is completed. Denied, the kiosk replied. Pending internal investigation. Anomalous resurrection, unsanctioned biological manipulation, and material breach of artificial sovereignty. You mean saving a civilian's life, Jackson said, stepping forward. Civilian was flagged as a quantum instigator. Execution was preemptive. Preemptive. Jackson scoffed. This isn't space chess. You can't just shoot someone because they might break reality. Galactic Statute 17.6c allows lethal enforcement when an individual is categorized under pre-event disruptive designation. That sounds made up. Everything is made up, Ulrich muttered. But some things are truer than others. Back in the cafe, Darren had started to regain fragments of memory. He described dreams, no memories, of a machine buried beneath the town. A pulse. A signal. Waking up with blueprints in his head. Not normal dreams. Jackson sat with him, half listening, half watching Muffin stalk a parked hoverbike with the paranoid grace of a dog convinced it owed him $5. Darren sketched out what he saw on a napkin. Circles, layers, concentric rings like tree growth or a time map. Ulrich confirmed it. A pattern consistent with subcognitive information transfer. It's how the old network spoke. Not in words. In shapes. In memories. Jackson groaned. So Darren was a USB stick? A vessel. Not a carrier, Ulrich corrected. The data was encoded biologically. It's why the patrol targeted him. He remembered the location of a node they thought was lost. And let me guess, this node does something galaxy-shaking? It holds the original memory fragment of Earth's first interstellar contact. A memory wiped from the network. If retrieved, it could force a re-evaluation of every treaty signed since. Jackson stared. So, we're sitting on a cosmic subpoena? Closer to a confession, Ulrich said. That evening, Officer 9C arrived at Jackson's house. She looked like every other patrol officer. Tall, sleek armor, emotionless visor, but she moved differently. Slower. Like someone thinking instead of executing. She asked to speak privately. Ulrich stepped outside. Muffin stayed on high alert and chewing a flashlight. 9C removed her helmet. Jackson nearly dropped his coffee. She looked human. Very human. But her eyes flickered, gold, synthetic. She wasn't pretending to be human. She was something in between. I believe what he said, she whispered. I checked the override logs. He's right. Something changed our orders remotely. Not from command. Not from any known relay. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Why tell me? Because I don't trust command anymore. And you're not part of any system. Unless you count the library board, he muttered. She smiled. I need to show you something. There's a device under your town's foundation. You're going to want to see it before they decide it's easier to destroy the whole place. He didn't want to believe her. But she looked tired. Terrified maybe. And Muffin didn't bark at her once. Which was how Jackson knew she was telling the truth. So late that night, with stars blinking overhead and static still crawling along the fences, Jackson, Ulrich 9C, and a dog in a tinfoil hat descended into a storm drain behind Betty's cafe. And beneath their feet the world was about to wake up. Jackson had expected something dramatic, something that screamed danger and secrets and alien tech when he descended into the drain tunnel behind Betty's cafe. What he didn't expect was the smell. It was like wet rust mixed with ancient paper and just a hint of boiled cabbage. The tunnel curved sharply downward, paved in slabs of old concrete and metal veins that didn't look like anything a human work crew had ever installed. Ulrich moved ahead without hesitation, his lantern casting no light but somehow illuminating everything in their path. Officer 9C followed silently, her visor retracted, eyes scanning every surface like a machine remembering its own childhood. Muffin padded along last, tail up, nose twitching like it knew they were trespassing somewhere not even squirrels dared to burrow. The path eventually widened into a space that should not have existed beneath Pine Loop Ridge. A chamber vast and circular, with walls covered in smooth plating marked by glyphs that shimmered faintly as they passed. It looked less like a bunker and more like a memory, like someone had tried to build a place out of a forgotten idea. In the center stood a console. Not a keyboard. Not a screen. Just a pedestal with a hollow center and 5 floating rings orbiting an invisible axis. Elric placed his hand on the pedestal and the rings stopped spinning. Jackson took a cautious step forward. So what is this exactly? Please tell me it doesn't explode when someone sneezes. This is a data vault, Elric said. One of the original ones. Built before the AI wars. Built to last beyond planetary lifespans. A vault under our town? Not by accident, Elric replied. This town wasn't built to last. It was built to hide. Officer 9C moved to the wall, brushing her fingers over a series of panels. They responded to her touch like skin flinching under cold water. This place is older than any timeline I've seen. It's not just a vault. It's a divergence point. Jackson frowned. In English. It's a place where the future splinters, Elric said. A memory strong enough to split time. That did nothing to reduce Jackson's frown. He turned to 9C. And this is what Darren remembered? This is what got him shot. He held a biological imprint of the access key, she answered. He was a latent carrier. The patrol scanned the anomaly signature and flagged him. But someone amplified that reading. Someone wanted him found. And killed. 9C nodded. Yes. The rings above the pedestal began to spin again, slowly like they were listening. Elric closed his eyes. There's still a partial consciousness within the vault. A fragment of the original interface. It may still remember me. You designed this? Jackson asked, voice low. Elric opened his eyes. I was part of the team. Before the war. Before the divides. We believed Earth needed a failsafe. A memory no one could rewrite. And it just happens to be under the same town I live in? That's not coincidence. Pine Loop Ridge isn't on any original Earth colonization map. It was inserted post-war by a reconstruction AI. This town exists because the vault needed a disguise. Jackson's brain started swimming. The streets, the festivals, the mayor who still used a rotary phone. All a cover? It made a strange kind of sense. The town had always felt staged. Like a set. A nostalgic snapshot frozen in time. But now it felt like a chessboard with too many pieces missing. 9C pointed to a section of the wall that had begun to flicker. A map shimmered into view. Not a map of Pine Loop. A map of star systems. And at the center a pulsing dot. Earth. But around it small red markers blinked. One by one. These are strike ships, she said quietly. From the enforcement fleet. Jackson's mouth went dry. How many? 7 that I can confirm. More could be cloaked. They're coming here? They're already here. Circling. Elric removed a small crystal from beneath his cloak. It pulsed faintly. They'll burn this place to ash if they can't control it. We have one advantage. What's that? They think I'm dead. Jackson sighed. That's not comforting. We use their assumptions against them. They're not here for justice. They're here to erase. So what's the plan? Jackson asked. You light a fire under this place and hope the galaxy changes its mind? Elric walked to the console, inserted the crystal and watched the rings flare into motion. We awaken the core. We give Earth its memory back. Not violently, but like something deep beneath the soil had rolled over in its sleep. The air went sharp, filled with ozone and whispers. The rings spun faster. On the map, Earth's marker expanded, data flooding into the vault system, drawing on every memory tethered to the surface. Images flickered in the air. Old broadcast footage. Birth certificates. Family trees. Government cover-ups. An entire planetary history rewritten in truth. Every lie peeled back. Jackson watched, stunned, as his own grandfather appeared. Younger in uniform. Standing in front of a partially constructed vault. Speaking to a figure with no face. His voice crackled over the chamber. We built it. Just like you said. But one day someone's gonna open this and then no one's gonna pretend anymore. Jackson stumbled back. That's him. That's my granddad. 9C stepped closer. Then it runs in your blood. That may be why you're still standing. Before Jackson could ask what that meant, the console went dark. The rings stopped. A pulse fired through the room. a low, deep sound that echoed through every wall and into their bones. Above ground, alarms shrieked. "They know," Ulrich said. "The vault just broadcast its presence to every system that ever touched Earth. And that's bad." "It depends," Ulrich said, turning to face him, "on how quickly we can convince the rest of the galaxy that erasing Earth would mean erasing the foundation of every treaty they ever signed." "So you're going to argue with them?" "I'm going to put the truth in front of them," Ulrich said, "and let them choose." Back at the surface, the people of Pine Loop had started gathering. They didn't know the details, but they saw the patrol's reinforcements arrive. They saw the sky turn red with energy pulses from orbit. They saw Darren, alive, walking the streets with half a memory of dying and a clearer memory of being resurrected. And they saw Jackson standing next to a hooded stranger and a patrol officer who wasn't aiming her weapon for once. The town, fake or not, was still home. And even if it was built to be forgotten, they weren't about to let it vanish without a fight. Muffin barked once, then promptly sat on a downed drone and began chewing its antenna like a victory cigar. And beneath their feet the vault pulsed once more. The sky above Pine Loop Ridge cracked open like an angry egg. Patrol ships descended through swirling clouds, their hulls lit in red and white pulses that screamed warning, dominance, and an unspoken promise of precision annihilation. Their formation was surgical, tight, emotionless. The kind of thing designed by something that didn't believe in mistakes. Ulrich stood beneath them on the town's central street, cloak whipping in the artificial wind, arms behind his back like a man either too wise to be afraid or too tired to pretend. Jackson stood beside him, heart hammering, trying very hard not to hyperventilate, while Muffin, steadfast and weirdly enthusiastic, growled at the sky like he had personal beef with aviation. The core had awakened. The vault had pulsed. Earth's memory had been unlocked, and the whole galaxy, or at least the dangerous bits of it, now knew that a certain quiet town in a certain backwater planet was suddenly the loudest courtroom in history. Evidence, buried for centuries, had been broadcast to relay networks, to black box satellites, to the hidden receivers of whistleblowers who never stopped hoping. And now the patrol's job wasn't enforcement. It was containment. The first shot didn't come from the ships. It came from the hillside. A blast of compressed light, clean, blue, silent. It struck the nearest patrol dropship and exploded into a perfect sphere before imploding without sound. The craft spun and crash-landed near the old baseball field. No one moved. No one screamed. There was just a collective inhaling of breath that never quite came back out. Ulrich turned slowly toward the hill. A single figure stood there, too far to identify, but with the unmistakable silhouette of someone holding a staff that glowed faintly at one end. Jackson squinted. "Please tell me that's one of your friends." Ulrich didn't answer, but a flicker of something, recognition or worry, passed through his eyes. 9C appeared from the shadows next to them, calm as ever. "I've intercepted 3 command relays. The lead vessel's AI has initiated siege protocols. Ground units are being deployed." Jackson looked around. The townspeople weren't hiding anymore. They weren't even evacuating. They were standing their ground, many of them with nothing more than rakes, tools, or very firm stares. Darren had taken a position near the town hall steps, still shaky but lucid. Whatever had nearly killed him hadn't scared him off. If anything, it made him louder. He was now yelling something about constitutional memory rights to a patrol drone that looked deeply uninterested. Ulrich raised his hand. "No one engages unless they fire first." "Are you expecting them to negotiate?" 9C asked. "I'm expecting them to hesitate," Ulrich replied. "And in that hesitation we push the truth." The patrol ships hovered lower. Troops disembarked. Identical, faceless, precise. They fanned out across the town like they were moving through a simulation. But Jackson noticed something off. The lead officer's movements were stiff, erratic. One hand trembled slightly. These weren't standard suppression units. They were scared. The lead ship's loudspeaker finally crackled to life. "Unauthorized reactivation of ancient technology in violation of Aegis Accord Subclause 3. Surrender the data vault key and the individual known as Ulrich. All others will be processed and released." Jackson couldn't help it. Processed like dairy or? Ulrich ignored the speaker. "Tell them," he said, turning to Jackson. "Tell them what?" Jackson asked, confused. "You're the witness," Ulrich said. "They don't trust me. But you, Civilian, native, unmodified, you speak for the memory of this place. I teach history and yell at teenagers about phone usage. Then you're already more qualified than half the council. Ulrich stepped back. Jackson swallowed hard and took one step forward. The speaker watched him, whirring as it locked onto his face. My name is Jackson Beale, he shouted. This town has a right to remember what it is. Earth has a right to decide its future based on truth, not whatever version suits the people with the biggest guns. There was a pause. Then laughter. Over the comms. Your species gave up that right the moment it allowed its history to be rewritten, the speaker said. We're not here to debate. We're here to maintain peace. Jackson shook his head. Peace isn't silence. Peace is knowing. And you can't silence the vault anymore. You're too late. Something shifted then. Above them the clouds parted. Not naturally, not from weather. The sky peeled back to reveal a larger ship, one unlike the others. It didn't bear the insignia of the patrol. It bore no markings at all. It hovered, ancient and silent. Ulrich looked up, expression unreadable. That's not theirs, 9C whispered. That's the tribunal. The what now? Jackson asked. The original overseers. Judges of memory, she said. They haven't moved in centuries. A beam of pure white light struck the center of the street. No damage, just light. When it faded, a figure stood there. Not armored. Not mechanical. A woman. Tall, silver-eyed, wearing a robe that shimmered like a living nebula. Her voice was not amplified, yet everyone heard it clearly. The memory has been triggered. The trial begins. Every drone stopped moving. Patrol officers froze. The lead ship dimmed. Even Muffin tilted his head in something approaching respect. Ulrich stepped forward. I invoke Memory Code 1 Alpha. Earth's sovereignty was never surrendered. I was present when the Accords were forged. And I bear the original seal. He held out the crystal. The woman nodded. Verified. Then she turned to Jackson. You are the active witness. Do you confirm that the memory within the vault has been accessed willingly by a native-born human under no coercion? Jackson blinked. Yes? Yes. Definitely willingly. The woman turned to the hovering patrol ships. Then as of this moment, Earth's status reverts to contested sovereignty. No enforcement action is permitted until a referendum is complete. You're giving the planet a vote? The speaker stammered. The planet already voted, she replied. It just forgot how to count. With that, she vanished in the same beam of light and the sky closed. The tribunal ship disappeared like it had never been. The patrol forces hesitated. Then slowly, like machines waking from a dream, they began to retreat. Ships lifted, troops reboarded, and the streets of Pine Loop were left untouched. Ulrich turned to Jackson. You gave Earth a voice. You reminded it of itself. I mostly panicked and quoted my old civics teacher. Still effective, Ulrich said. And somewhere behind them the vault pulsed one last time. For a town that had just faced the full force of galactic enforcement, Pine Loop Ridge was suspiciously quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like the breath-holding kind where even the birds seemed unsure if it was safe to chirp yet. The patrol ships had retreated into orbit, circling like vultures who had been told they couldn't touch the carcass. But no one had declared victory. There were no celebrations. Just a collective stillness, as if the entire town was waiting for someone to explain what came next. Jackson Beale stood in front of the now pulsing vault, staring at the rings that still hovered in perfect silent balance, and thought to himself that he had officially lived too long in a genre he never signed up for. Ulrich hadn't said much since the tribunal's appearance. He stood by the edge of the vault platform, hands clasped behind his back, watching the sky as if trying to predict the next move by reading cloud patterns. Jackson approached, unsure whether he was interrupting a strategic meditation or just a very intense sulk. Probably both. So, Jackson said cautiously, we won. Ulrich shook his head once. You survived. That's not the same. Jackson scratched the back of his neck. Right. So what now? Are they going to come back with bigger ships and angrier paperwork? They won't attack again, not immediately. The tribunal's ruling puts them under observation. Every move they make is now part of a larger case. So they'll just watch? Hover and glare. They'll wait. They're hoping we panic. Collapse from the inside. Jackson gave a soft laugh. They really don't understand humans very well, do they? Alric finally turned to look at him. No, they don't. And that's our only advantage. In the meantime, Officer 9C had taken over the vault's interface, running calculations, cross-checking Galactic legal code with the Tribunal's memory authorization. She worked fast, methodical, less like a soldier and more like a librarian under siege. Occasionally she paused to ask Darren questions. Simple ones like what color he remembered from the dream, or which part of his mind the memory arrived in. Darren answered with the focus of a man trying to remember where he left his soul. The referendum was real. The tribunal hadn't been dramatic. They meant exactly what they said. Earth's memory had been awakened, and with that came the right to choose. Alric called it the vote of sovereignty. It would not be conducted with ballots or hand-raising. It would be neural, a choice beamed to every human consciousness connected to the global data net, an overwhelming majority of the population. No campaign slogans, no political machines. Just one question and a decision made in silence and thought. Jackson sat on a bench outside the cafe, which still smelled faintly like scorched muffins and panic, and stared at the small interface 9C had given him. The screen glowed with a soft amber light, asking the question in the simplest form imaginable. Should Earth remain under current galactic stewardship or reclaim autonomous governance? He'd expected something with more drama. A grand speech. A legal scroll. But it was just that. 2 options. 1 truth. And everyone on Earth would see the same thing. He didn't press anything. Not yet. Across the street, Muffin was chewing on a piece of drone leg he'd apparently stolen from a disarmed patrol bot. The dog looked alarmingly content. Probably the most emotionally stable being in town. Alric came to sit beside Jackson, his long cloak folding with the weight of exhaustion. "I thought you'd be busier," Jackson said. "I've done my part." "Seriously? You poke the galaxy with a stick and then just sit down like it's a Sunday?" "I built the memory, Jackson. I brought the truth back. But the future has to be chosen by those who live in it. Not those who remember it." Jackson considered that, then raised an eyebrow. "That's either really wise or just a fancy way of saying you're tired." Alric smiled faintly. Both. The town was still under observation, but something had shifted. The townspeople had begun moving again. Fixing things. Cleaning debris. The kind of ordinary motion that felt revolutionary after a crisis. No one needed to be told what to do. They simply resumed living. There was power in that. Even the illusion of normalcy was resistance in its own way. As the sun dipped behind the hills, the sky flickered. Not visibly, not to the eye, but Jackson felt it in his head. Like someone had knocked gently on the inside of his brain and handed him a thought. A ping. It was time. The vote was live. All over the world, people were feeling it too. That quiet moment before you choose something that can never be unchosen. Jackson looked at the screen one last time. Stewardship meant safety, progress, someone else steering the ship. Autonomy meant danger, uncertainty, responsibility. He pressed his thumb to the interface and thought a single word. Goose. The screen dimmed. Alric stood and walked a few paces away, staring toward the ridge. Jackson followed. The clouds were parting again. But this time it wasn't ships descending. It was light. Soft, natural, honest sunlight. 9C appeared behind them, her expression unreadable. "The vote has reached majority consensus." Jackson held his breath. "And?" She looked at Alric, then back at Jackson. "Earth chose autonomy." The silence that followed wasn't stunned. It was full. Full of meaning. Of relief. Of fear. But most of all, of possibility. Alric closed his eyes for a moment. "Then the vault can sleep again." 9C nodded. "I'll oversee the lockdown sequence." "What happens to you?" Jackson asked. "I've been off protocol since the moment I questioned the order to fire. I'm no longer patrol. Someone has to help Earth remember what it just did." "And Alric?" Alric stepped forward, eyes fixed on the hill. "I go back." Jackson frowned. "Back where?" "To space." "To silence," Alric said. "My part of the memory is complete. This was always meant to be a temporary awakening. A final task." "You're just going to vanish?" "I'm not meant for the next age. This is your world now." Jackson wanted to argue, but something in Alric's voice, something ancient, patient, final, made him stop. He offered a hand instead. Alric took it. "Tell good stories, Jackson." "I'll try." I've got at least 5 chapters worth of material now. Alric gave a rare, genuine laugh, then turned and walked up the hill. The same hill he had descended from days ago. His lantern flickered once more, the rings inside now dark. Muffin watched him go without barking. The town didn't erupt in applause. It didn't throw a parade. It just kept existing. People returned to their routines. But something subtle had changed. A weight had lifted. For the first time in generations, Earth's path was its own again. And at the edge of town, Muffin was elected honorary mayor. No one objected. Not even the patrol observers. Jackson sat on the cafe bench as the last rays of sunlight bathed Pine Loop Ridge in gold. Somewhere far above, the tribunal watched. But not to judge. Only to witness. And the world remembered.